You don't gotta follow us, but follow Jesus. And
Actions. Let's get
so
started.
let's get started. Yeah. Laban, Laban, James.
Who is that?
Hey. Praise the Lord for another day.
We're excited to see you guys tomorrow. Actually, when you guys see this video, we would have already seen you guys. So today we're going to talk about the 12 tribes. First, before we jump into the actual story, I just wanted to give you guys a couple fun facts about the number 12. The number 12 is in the Bible 187 times. Also, there are 12 apostles of Jesus, 12 gates in the God's kingdom. Jesus spoke his first words at the age of 12. And each tribe of Israel had 12,000 God's servants. So let's go ahead and jump into the 12 tribes of Israel. Who is Israel?
So Israel is Jacob, but Jacob is Jacob for a while. His name later changes to Israel, and that's because one night he was wrestling with they call it I guess an angelic stranger, and later he realized that he was wrestling with God, that he had seen God face to face, and he was still survived.
Lillian woke up, so she's gonna join us as long as she can.
So Jacob had two wives, Rachel and Leah. But how this came about was because of their father, Laban or Laban, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. But Jacob was staying with Laban, and he saw his daughter, Rachel, and thought she was really beautiful, and he wanted to marry her. And so he was willing to work for Rachel as his wife for 7 years. So he did that. He worked for 7 years, and when the time came, Laban gave his daughter to Jacob at night in the dark, and then in the morning, Jacob realized it was Leah. It wasn't Rachel, the daughter that he had worked for, and he asked Laban, why did you do that? And he said, because Leah was the firstborn, so they needed to marry the firstborn first. So he was willing to give him Rachel if he worked another 7 years. That was their agreement. So worked another 7 years for Rachel. So
he's married to Leah and Rachel at the same time.
The reason why Jacob didn't want Leah as his wife, he thought that she wasn't very attractive, and that's why he wanted Rachel. But anyway, so Rachel was not able to have children for a long time, but Leah could, and so he had a few children with Leah, which the firstborn would be Reuben, which later Reuben actually loses his birthright, and as a firstborn because of some messed up things he did. And the other sons were Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun.
So they were all from Leah, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So during this time, when Rachel wasn't able to have kids, she was upset with Jacob, and
even though it wasn't Jacob's fault, but
yeah, Jacob had asked her, like, basically, I'm not God, I didn't do this to you. And so what happens is Rachel offers, so Rachel and Leah, they each have their own maid. When Laban gave Leah to Jacob, he also gave her a maid. So we're back. They had to put Lillian down.
So Leah had all of her children.
Yeah, so Leah had all her children.
Was it all of them, or did
Not
she
all
have
of them.
some?
Well, she didn't have all her children yet, I don't think. And then Rachel was upset. She didn't have kids, so she offered her maid
Bilhah?
Bilhah. So, and then Bilhah ended up having 2 children, Dan and Naphtali. And later, Leia wasn't able to have kids as well. So then she offered her maid, Zilpah.
Zilpah, yeah.
And Zilpah had Gad and Asher. So that's only 6, 7, 8 of the sons. 8? No, 6, 8, 9, 10. And so Rachel still needs to have 2, but they thought she couldn't have any. And so, yeah, as we said, she was upset, but she kept praying, and she's trying to do things her own way. And also that's why, because they were doing it their own way, they had their maids have the children. But in God's time, Rachel bore Joseph.
Okay, so the story of Joseph. Joseph, like Dano was saying, he was born by a woman they thought couldn't have children. So his parents favorited him. Jacob favorited him over the rest of his brothers.
So Joseph was a favorite. Jacob made him this coat. You've probably heard about it. A coat of many colors. It was probably fancy. Probably looked like some Gucci or something. And then and he would have dreams. They were more like visions, I guess, or just dreams. You can just say dreams. And his brothers would mock him, or they didn't believe it until they started to see things were coming true that he was talking about. And eventually,
so his brothers were really, really jealous of him, because of his talents and because he was that miracle baby. So eventually his brothers went against him and sold him. I think they just kidnapped him at first, and then eventually it turned into selling him into slavery. So Joseph starts off as a servant there, and then he ends up being a prisoner because Pharaoh's wife tries to seduce him, and Joseph is very loyal to his master and tells her, like, no, I'm not going to do this. And because of that, she got upset. She had taken a garment of his to hold it against him as evidence. And because of that, he went into prison. And he was a prisoner for a while, and things are looking so bad for him. His brothers turned on him and sold him into slavery, and then he turns into a servant and prisoner. So when Joseph is this prisoner, I think the warden actually puts Joseph in charge of the prisoners. There was 2 other men in there that had worked for Pharaoh, and there was these 2 men in there that were having these dreams, and Joseph told them that he could interpret what the dreams were, that he had that gift, what the dreams had meant. The first one, it had basically meant that in 3 days' time, someone was going to pull that man out to go see Pharaoh. And then the other man, his dream basically meant in 3 days' time, he was going to be executed.
Yeah.
And he told the man that was actually going to be released, tell Pharaoh about my gift. Tell him what I can do. Tell him I told you this was going to happen. And so nothing happens for a while. Joseph's still stuck in prison. And eventually they come down to get him because Pharaoh had been having these reoccurring dreams, and he heard about Joseph's gift, so he really wanted him to interpret them for him. So what Pharaoh's dream had meant was that there was going to be famine in the land. And because Joseph interpreted his dream, Pharaoh actually ended up making him second in command to help save the land. And that's exactly what he did. They not only survived the famine, but they did very well. And what they did is they stocked up to prepare for this famine. That way, when it happened, they were good. And so what had happened during this time is Joseph's brothers actually traveled to Egypt to purchase some crops to feed their family. His brothers come, and Joseph pretty much questioned them about their honesty, right?
Mm-hmm.
pretty much Joseph found out that he's got another brother, no. Reuben had told him that they have another younger brother at home, and Joseph didn't know him, so he basically accused him of lying, and they said, bring me this brother. So this famine happened, and if Joseph hadn't been sold into slavery and hadn't been in Egypt when he was, and in the position that he was in, who knows what have happened to his family. So maybe that saved their family from surviving the famine and living on, to become this 12 tribes of Egypt. So, I mean, the Lord's plan was always going to happen, and he was always with Joseph through every bit of it, no matter how bad it probably got for him. I just want to read Genesis 50:20. Joseph kind of points this out to his brother. It says, but as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto us to bring to pass as it is this day, to save much people alive. So yeah, like I said, he's pretty much saying, even though you did this for evil, God had different intentions, and God made this to be good. This purpose was to save people, to save his family and others, many others, because he didn't just save his family. He saved everybody in Egypt and everybody coming through to purchase this harvested crop during the famine time. So I think that's a very powerful meaning behind the story of Joseph that anybody could take from it. Bad things happen to everybody, but we just gotta give it to God and trust that he has a way out of it. Eventually, all is well with them, and Joseph ends up taking in his whole family, and the 12 tribes end up staying in Egypt for about 400 years until they actually go and find the promised land.
So the tribes are in Egypt for 400 years. During this time, 3 important tribes emerged: Judah, Levi, and Ephraim. And actually, Judah is where you get where King David comes from, and Jesus. Levi is important because when Moses went up into the mountain to talk with God, the rest of the nation was at the bottom of the mountain, and they had built a golden calf, and worshipped it. And Moses wasn't happy about that, so he asked them, who's for the Lord here? And only Levi's tribe responded with loyalty to God. And they were blessed for that. So Moses had to send one representative from each tribe. So that's 12. And to the promised land. He sent them ahead to go check it out and come back and let them know how it was. Out of the 12, only 2 came back with positive feedback, with positive feedback saying that it's good, let's go. And they're the only ones who believe that they'd be protected by God. Caleb was from the tribe of Judah, and Caleb was loyal to God and to Moses, and everyone else wanted to kill Moses and his brother Aaron. But Caleb was blessed because he wasn't for that. And he makes it to the promised land. But I guess most of Caleb's generation die in the wilderness. Joshua was the representative from the tribe of Ephraim, and he served Moses his entire life. Joshua was selected by God and Moses to lead the people into the promised land. When they finally get to the promised land, so 9 were on the west and 3 were on the east. Manasseh, which Manasseh was one of Joseph's sons. Manasseh and Ephraim were Joseph's sons. But his father Jacob told him that those 2 were going to be his sons, and any sons he has after that will be his. And this gave them territory, which gave So Joseph also had inherited the birthright, as I spoke a little bit about before, from Reuben as the firstborn. So he was going to receive a double portion, and that kind of gave him that double portion by Ephraim and Manasseh having the land. So the tribe, or the territory, Ephraim, or Manasseh, was split into two across the river. So the Levites, Levi's tribe, they'd end up not inheriting any land. Instead, they inherited the responsibility of taking care of God's temple. And so that included like sacrifices and feasts. And how they survived was through the offerings of the people, because they didn't have land, so they couldn't produce their own harvest. And so people would bring an offering, and what an offering was from their crop, from their harvest. And so that's how they survived, and they were able to eat and continue taking care of God's temple, which was important because this is showing the people how to stay loyal to God. And so it was a privilege, or it was a great honor to be able to be in charge of God's temple. So eventually the 12 tribes form a nation under King David. King David was from the tribe of Judah, and he unites the 12 tribes into one kingdom. They established Jerusalem as the capital of Judah. So God makes a covenant to join the houses with David, and says there will be a son of David on the throne in God's kingdom forever. He's talking about Jesus later on down the line when we get the story of Jesus being born. So David's son Solomon, this is two generations later. He doesn't stay loyal to God, and this caused the nation to split into two. It became two kingdoms, Israel and Judah. And both of them, because they're not being loyal to God, that's just what happens whenever in life, when you try to do things your own way. They end up falling out and just getting so far from God, worshiping other gods, following other religions. Okay, so this divided kingdom, Jesus finally arrives there and starts to make changes. He chooses his own 12, which are the apostles. One of them being Paul, and also they took things from Judah and from Levi, from those tribes, and used it because Jesus was the high priest. And Paul had actually said, if you have faith, you're a child of Abraham. So what this meant was you didn't have to actually be Jewish, that anybody could be part of this kingdom, this new kingdom. Everybody was able to worship God. So this was the 12 tribes coming together into Jesus' kingdom. So just remember that God can always take what looks bad, use it for good, and that we need to be patient and wait on the Lord.
Yeah, the God's will be done no matter what the situation looks like, and we just gotta always trust in Him. So that is our lesson of the week. We hope you guys enjoyed it. Feel free to leave any comments with questions or anything down below. And we're so excited to be back in church with you guys. God bless you guys. Look at the camera. Look. Say hi.